What if I told ya? The reason you feel older than your age has nothing to do with wisdom and everything to do with survival. Some people collect memories. You collected responsibilities. And that changes a person. If you've ever felt like you skipped your childhood, luck you've been tired for as long as you can remember. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you may realize something unsettling. You didn't grow up fast. You were pushed. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. Feeling older than your age isn't a personality trait. It's a nervous system adaptation. But the real twist, that identity might not even be the real you. We'll come back to that. The child who became the adult. Picture this. You're 8 years old. You can tell when your parent is stressed before they say a word. You know when to stay quiet. You know when to be helpful. You know when not to ask for anything. You became mature. Teachers praised you. Relatives admired you. Such an old soul, they said. But what they were really seeing was a child who didn't feel safe being a child. In 1973, family therapist Salvador Munachun described something called parentification, when a child takes on adult emotional or practical roles. Sometimes it's obvious, cooking, caregiving, handling finances. But sometimes it's invisible. Being the therapist for your parents. Being the peacekeeper. Being the strong one. And here's the psychological cost. When responsibility replaces play, identity forms around survival. You don't just act older. You become older internally. But that maturity came with a silent trade. Your softness. Have you ever felt like you were the responsible one too early? Come on too soon if that resonates. Now let's go deeper. Not everyone who feels older has chaos. Some had quiet. Emotional neglect isn't about what happened. It's about what didn't. No one noticed your overwhelm. No one mirrored your sadness. No one said, you don't have to handle this alone. Dr. Jonas Wubb's research on childhood emotional neglect shows that when children don't receive emotional attunement, they stop expressing needs. They shrink them. And when you shrink your needs long enough, you start feeling self-sufficient. But self-sufficiency at 9 is not strength. It's an adaptation. Fast forward to adulthood. You struggle to ask for help. You feel oddly disconnected from peers. You feel older in conversations. Because while others were exploring identity, you were managing emotional weather. And that ages a person internally. But here where it gets even more interesting. This isn't just psychological. It's neurological. Chronic childhood stress doesn't just shape personality. It shapes the brain. Research published in Development and Psychopathology throughout the 2010s shows that prolonged early stress can accelerate connectivity between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, regions responsible for threat detection and emotional regulation. Translation. Your brain wired itself for vigilance. You scan rooms automatically. You detect microshifts in tone. You anticipate problems before they happen. People call that wisdom. But neurologically, it's hyper-awareness. And hyper-awareness is exhausting. That constant internal scanning makes you feel older. Because you're not just experiencing life. You're monitoring it. Have you noticed you can sense tension before anyone speaks? I feel it if that's you. Here's the subtle trap. You were rewarded for being mature. Adults trusted you. Friends leaned on you. You were dependable. And slowly, your value fused with responsibility. Psychologist Uruk Urukson argued that adolescence is meant for identity exploration. But what happens when survival overrides exploration? You don't experiment. You stabilize. You don't ask, who am I? You ask what's needed. So by the time you reach your 20s or 30s, you feel older. Not because of time, but because you skipped the stage where you were allowed to be uncertain. And uncertainty is youthful. You were certain too early. Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you felt truly carefree? Not productive. Not composed. Kafra. If that question feels uncomfortable, write in the comments. Sometimes silence says more than words. Here's something most people won't admit. Fun can feel unsafe. If your nervous system equates control with safety, spontaneity feels threatening. Play requires letting go. Letting go requires trust. And trust wasn't always available. Attachment theory, starting with John Bulba and Mary Unsworth, shows that early caregiving shapes how safe we feel expressing needs and vulnerability. If you learn that your needs were secondary, joy can trigger guilt, rest can trigger anxiety, and that internal tension feels like aging. Because youth is associated with lightness, and you feel heavy. Remember the twist I promised. Here it is. You don't feel older because you matured faster. You feel older because you carried weight that wasn't yours. And weight creates gravity. Gravity slows you down. It makes you serious. Mujkud. Gudud. But underneath that gravity, there is still a version of you that never got to play. Psychologists sometimes refer to developmental asynchrony when parts of the self mature at different speeds. You may have adult-level competence, but child-level unmet needs. That's why sometimes you feel wise beyond your years, and other times inexplicably small. You didn't eliminate your childhood. You postponed it. And postponed emotions don't disappear. They wait. They show up as sudden sadness, attraction to older partners, difficulty receiving care, a secret desire to be protected. It's not regression. It's an unfinished development. And here's the empowering truth. Unfinished does not mean broken. What if feeling older is who you are? It's who you had to be. Neuroplasticity research, popularized by Dr. Norman Dudja and supported by decades of neuroscience, shows the brain remains adaptable throughout life. Which means, if vigilance was learned, so can safety. If responsibility was conditioned, so I can play. You are not an old soul. You are an early adapter. And early adapters can learn new settings. Imagine this visually. Two timelines. One child climbed uphill too fast. An adult walking back down gently to meet them. Text on screen. You didn't age too fast. You carried too much. So here's the question that matters. If you put down the weight, who would you become? Not the responsible one. Not the strong one. Not the mature one. Just you. Because maybe the goal isn't to become younger. Maybe it's to finally feel safe enough to be light. If this video felt personal, like it was describing something you've never had words for, I like it. So someone else who feels too old inside can find it. Subscribe for deeper psychology explorations like this. And turn on notifications because next time we're diving into the psychology of people who struggle to receive love. Until then, remember, you weren't born older. You were trained to be. And training can be unlearned.